Okay, one of the things that I want to show you is how we can change the layout to however you want to display it. So you'll notice over here that if I click on the default drop down, it says 2 by 3. Let's see what that looks like. So in this case, depending on the resolution of your screen, you're going to get this type of layout where you have a screen above and a screen below, or a view above and a view below with some of the various panels over here. Let's see what the 4 split looks like. Okay, so in essence, I'm going to get these 4 displays, 4 scene displays, and so forth and so on. So you can click on any of these depending on the kind of view that you want. Your view may look different than mine, and that's okay. You don't have to have yours looking exactly the same way as mine. Maybe I want to have 2 displays over here, right? So the 2 by 3. And let's say that I want to change how this looks. Like, for example, right now I'm in this perspective mode. And now I'm in this mode, and I'm clicking this to show the different modes. If I click on the various buttons over here on my X, Y, and Z axis little icon over here, it could change the perspective that I'm looking at. So as you can see here, I'm just clicking some of these to show you the different perspectives. And then if I click on this, it's just simply going to toggle, as you can see, a couple of different items here. Same thing over here. Now this guy over here, it looks like we have the actual game view. So in fact, let me go ahead and run the game and see what this looks like. And as you can see here, when I move the buttons to the left, right, up, and down, we are looking at this from the camera's perspective. Okay, let me go ahead and exit out of this game. Alright, so to go back to the perspective mode, what I'll do is I'll just right click over here where it says bottom. I'll right click, and I'm already in the perspective mode, and I'm going to click free, and that puts me back in this mode over here where I can freely move the perspective around. For me, I hold down the Alt button. I'm on a Macintosh, and then I can use my trackpad, as you can see over here, to move around and to rotate various locations. And if I want a mouse, it'd be a lot easier. But that's how you change this back to the free mode. Just right-click. It's already in perspective. Change it to free. And of course, you can select any of these other options based on the perspective that you want. In this particular setup, this is the location of the camera's perspective, so that when I run the game, as I'll do over here, now I can go ahead and use my arrows to see what that looks like from either perspective view or from the camera's view. Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and create a bunch of collectible objects that we can place around the sphere. So the first thing that we're going to do is in the Hierarchy tab, and over here where it says Create, and by the way, if you click any of these expandable, collapsible triangles here, it's going to show you the information that's below it. But over here where it says Hierarchy, I'm going to click Create, click the drop-down Create. I'm going to hover on top of Object, and then I'll select the cube. Alright, so it places the cube right here. Actually, you know what we should do is make sure that it's centered. So over here in the Inspector panel, I have this gear drop down, and so when I click Set, it's going to make sure, Reset I should say, it's going to make sure to place this object right in the center, in the origin. In fact, let me go ahead and move this deliberately just to show you that. So I'm going to go ahead and click over here on the gear, and then select Reset, and you see what it does. It just moves it into this particular location. Now, I need to focus in on this, and you've seen before where I've clicked Edit and clicked the letter F or frame selected. So if I do that, it'll zoom in so that I can focus just on this particular cube. Now, the one thing that I don't like is I can't really work on this with the sphere or the player object in the way. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go ahead and select Player in this Hierarchy panel. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on this checkbox right here. And what it does is it just simply shows me if whether or not this is visible or not. So if I click on this, I can bring it back in terms of visibility. If I click on this again, it'll get rid of it so that now I can work specifically on the cube object. Okay, I'm going to rename cube. So I'm going to click it once slowly, and so now I can change the text. I'm going to rename this to pickup. This is my pickup object that I want to capture with the sphere or the player. When I touch it, it's going to disappear. But as you can see here, the cube is half on top, half on the bottom of the plane. So let's go ahead and pick this up, and if I click over here where it says Transform Position, if I type in 0.5, that's going to raise it up exactly half. And so we now know that it's on top of this on the plane. But let's make this a little bit smaller. I don't like the way that this looks. So what I'm going to do over here in scale is I'll type in 0.5, tab, 0.5, tab, 0.5, tab once again. And so now it looks like the cube is hovering on top of the surface. And let's work on making this even more attractive by rotating it. All right, to change the rotation, we'll just simply go over here to the Transform Rotation section. I'm going to double click over here where it says X-axis, type in 45, tab, 45, tab, 45. So in essence, what I'm doing is I'm rotating the X, the Y, and the Z axis by 45 degrees, and you see the impact that it has. It looks like the cube is standing on its corner. You'll notice that when I run the game, so let me go ahead and click and run the game. So it doesn't look like anything's really happening. Of course, the sphere is not active, and so you don't see that on the screen. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have this cube perform some sort of a rotation so that it stands out. So let me go ahead and exit out of the game. In order to do that, we're going to have to create a script. But I want to create a script specifically for this pickup object. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll select the pickup object. And you'll notice over here in the inspector panel, I have Add Component. So I'm going to click on Add Component. Let me scroll all the way down to the bottom because I want to generate a new script. So I'll click on New Script. And the name for the new script, we're going to call this Rotator. It's already going to save this as a C# script. That's fine. So now I'll click Create and Add. All right, so here is the Rotator script. What I want to do now is I want to drag and drop this into the scripts folder so that it's located also with the additional scripts that already exist. So I'll just take this guy, drag and drop it over here to the scripts folder. There we go. Let go. So now when I click on the scripts folder, so that I have my Rotator script, let me go ahead and select that. I can either double click it, or since it's already selected, I can now click Open, and that's going to take me into the MonoDevelop Unity where I can go ahead and create my new script. All right, before I continue, I don't need some of these various panels, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this solution panel. I have this watch panel, I don't need that. And I have this call stack panel. So basically these panels I don't need at this point. Later on I can bring them up and talk about them. But for right now, let me just go ahead and close them so I have more screen real estate for typing my code. So the idea is to update the frame, to update the rotation rather of the cube every frame. And so to do that, I'm going to use this update function. You don't need this particular function, so I'm going to go ahead and select that, delete it, and go over here to the update. And what I'm trying to update is the transform of our object. So to update the transform, we'll simply type the word transform, and it's in lowercase t as you can see here, dot, oops, sorry, get rid of that, transform, dot. When the dot operator is selected, now I can choose between any of the different functions, and so the one function that I'm interested in is rotate. So I'll click tab, parentheses. Now we're going to create a new vector3 object, and so if you don't understand what that is, which you probably don't, that's okay, don't worry about it. You're just parroting what I'm doing right now. The idea is we need to give this thing a three-dimensional, a vector3 object that is going to explain how we are going to rotate this particular transform, and this transform applies to that cube that we just created back in Unity. So what we'll do is we'll just type in new vector3. It's this guy right here. Let me double click. And so that means I've got to give it an X, Y, and Z axis parameter. So what we'll type is 15, 30, 45. And so what this is doing is it's describing how we're going to rotate this transform. Now, I want this thing to be frame rate independent. I also want it to smoothly rotate. And so just accept that in order to make that happen, you're going to multiply this times a time object. So what does this say? It says the interface to get time information from Unity. And specifically, I'm going to type in delta time. And so what is this? Delta time says the time in seconds it took to complete the last frame. So by doing this, it's going to make our rotation time independent, or frame independent rather, and it's going to rotate it in a very smooth fashion. Okay, so you type in this code. Don't forget to click the, or to enter the semicolon, And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to Unity and play the game, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now we're playing the game, and it doesn't look like anything happened here, so let me go back over here and make sure that I save my work. So I'm going to go over here, save my work. Now I can go back over here to Unity and enter into the play mode, and there we go. So it looks like the cube is now rotating. That's exactly the kind of behavior that we want when the user is playing our game. All right, I like how this is working out, and what I want to do now is to create a bunch of these on my game. So what I'm going to do, first of all, let me get out of this run, and what I need to do is I need to not copy and paste this, but I need to take this and create what's referred to as a prefab. And a prefab in Unity is kind of like a class. It's something that you can instantiate other objects from, but if you are not familiar with classes, the idea is let's take this object and let's use that as a template to create other similar objects that we could spread around the screen. So that's what a prefab does. And I want to spread these out among the plane. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to right click over here on this, and let's see what a top-down view looks like. That looks pretty good. And let's see what happens if I want to try to zoom out. So I'm holding down the Alt button. I'm on my trackpad, so I'm rotating from top down or scrolling from top down, and that looks pretty good right there. And let me see if I can just move over just a little bit over here to the right, or to the left I should say, and let me hold down the Alt button. Here we go, something like this, and this will allow me to see what it looks like from the top down view. So I'm going to use my arrows to refine. There we go. Actually, I should probably zoom out a little bit more, and I'll use my arrows over here. That looks good. So now I can see what it looks like. What I'm going to do is after I create this as a prefab, I'm just going to go ahead and place several of these pickup objects around the plane. Well, the first thing to do is to create a project called prefabs. So over here in the project tab, I'm going to go ahead and click the create button, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a folder. So let me click on folder, and over here it says new folder, and I'll type in prefabs. Now I don't want the prefabs folder to be in the scripts folder. What I should have done is I should have clicked over here and then created the folder, but that's okay. If that happens, I can just simply take this folder, drag it outside. Let me drag it outside here like this. There you go, just underneath assets. There we go. So now I have a prefabs folder that's not inside of any of these other folders, and now I can go ahead and add prefabrications to this folder. At this point, let's go ahead and take our pickup object from the hierarchy form, or from the hierarchy panel, and we're going to drag and drop that into our prefabs folder. Let go. And so now this is going to be an object inside of our prefabs folder. At this point, we're going to need to create a new game object to collect our pickup objects. So what we'll do is we'll go over here to the hierarchy, and I'll click on create, and then create empty. And so this is our game object. We're going to rename this. So let me go ahead and tap once, and I'm going to type on top of this, and this won't be pick up, but it'll be the plural pickups. So I'll click it like this, or enter it like this. And I want the pickup to be inside. So you can think of this as a parent, you can think of this as a child. This is a collection of all the pickups, and this is an actual individual pickup. So what I'll do is I'll take this guy, I'm going to hold my mouse, actually I'm on the trackpad, I'm going to hold my finger down and drag this into here, let go, and so now we see that this individual pickup is a child inside of the parent pickups. Now for the pickups, I'm not sure if I typed in reset. I don't think I did, so I just want to make sure that I type reset over here. And for the pickup, I think that that's already reset, so we're all set there. At this point, I am ready to place my collectibles around the game scene here. So let me go ahead and make sure that pickup is selected. And if I want to duplicate this, I can go ahead and hit Command D, or on a PC it would be Control D, or I could just simply click on duplicate. And so you can see the duplicate object over here. So what I can do is I can take this and use these arrows to move it around individually on the X or Y axis, or I can grab inside of this square, and I can go ahead and move this into different locations. Now, you may not be in global mode, you may be in local mode, and if that's the case, then this is not going to affect it properly. Well, you can really see the effect that this has over here. Let me undo. And that's not what we want, so we want to change this over here to global, and then when it's in global, now you're moving this basically on top of the surface of the surface of the screen, or the surface of the plane. So let me go ahead and place this up here, and so I have this one pickup object over here, and I'll place this over here at around 3 o'clock. And basically I'm just going from the center to the outside edge, trying to just eyeball it. Let me go ahead and hit Command D, and I'll take this guy and move it over here to 6 o'clock, around here. Command D. Let's move this to about 9 o'clock. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill in between. So Command D, and I'll just take this guy and put it right over here around 1 o'clock. Command D, put this guy over here at about 2 o'clock. We already have a 3 o'clock Command D, so I'll put one over here at 4 o'clock, Command D, 5 o'clock. We already have one at 6 o'clock, so Command D, let's put one at 7. Command D, put one at 8 o'clock. Command D, put one's already at 9 o'clock, put this at 10. And then Command D, put this at 11 o'clock, something like that. In fact, let me go ahead and select this one. Move it down just a little bit, maybe move it over just a little bit, something like that. Looks pretty good. Uh-oh, it looks like I affected my collectible object so that part of it is actually into the ground. That kind of looks cool, but I want them all above the ground. But let me just see what this looks like when I enter into play mode. I like it, but let's say that we want these above. I should have been careful about that. So what I'll do is I could just go ahead and select all these, and let's select this guy, and we hold down Shift and select this guy over here. And what I wanted in terms of position was 0.5, so I'll just select this guy over here for the position, y-axis 0.5, sorry, enter. Okay, everything brought up, that's good. So we'll leave it like this, and now if I were to go into the play mode, yeah, that looks nice. Let me exit out of play mode. In order to make these collectibles stand out a little bit more, let's change them to a yellow color. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'll just simply go to Materials, and we already have a material over here that says Background. Let me go ahead and select that background. I'm going to copy and paste, so that's Control-C, Control-V as in Victor. Well, actually, it doesn't work with Control-C and V. How about duplicate? So that'll be Command D. Yep, that worked out. All right, so let me go ahead and duplicate that, and instead of calling this background, so let me select once. Now I can change the name, and we'll just simply call this Pickup. So this is going to be the material specifically for the pickup objects, and I don't want that to be the same color as the background. I want this to be a different color. So we'll go over here to this albedo color picker. I'm going to click over here, and so then I can change to a different color, and I want a yellowish type of color. So let me go over here to the yellow section, and let me click over here and drag and select over here in the upper right hand corner. I don't care what version of yellow that you select. This one looks pretty good. And then I can go ahead and close the color picker, and so you can see over here from the preview that this pickup is now a yellow color. So I want that to be applied to all of my objects. So if I apply it to one, I can apply it to all. So check this out. I'll take this, I'll drag it on top of pickup, and so it changes this one instant, but I want this to apply to all of the instances. So what we're going to do is we're going to update it. The way that we update all of our pickup objects is, first of all, let me go ahead and select the one that I just dragged and dropped the yellow material to. And then over here in the inspector panel, you'll see the word apply, or the button apply. And we are going to apply this to the prefab. So when I click apply, now notice that all of the pickup objects have the same color. Let's run our game to see what it looks like so far. So I'm going to go ahead and click run. And yep, everything's looking pretty good. Looks like our yellow collectibles are rotating, but I don't see my spheres. So let me go ahead and stop running the program. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the player, and I'm going to click over here, this checkbox, so that I can activate the player. There we go. And let's go ahead and see what this looks like now. So let me go ahead and run the game. All right, so let's go ahead and move the arrows. So I'm going to move the arrows to the up, down, left, right, and see what happens. Yeah, looks pretty good. Wow. wow, look at that. Notice that when the player comes into contact with an object, it just stops. Here's another potential problem that I have here. If I were to take this player and go off screen, so if I do something like this, let's see if we can get him going off screen, and he drops to oblivion. So that's not good. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to place walls around here so that we can contain our player from falling off the screen. But you already noticed that when I come into contact with one of these objects, like one of these collectibles, it doesn't collect it and disappear. It kind of bumps into it, as you can see over here, right? So we're bumping into that. So we're going to have to fix that eventually as well. All right, so here's another thing that I want to make an adjustment to. I don't like the location of the camera. So let me go ahead and select main camera, and so then I have these various objects that I can select. Let's see here, if I were to change the perspective to something like this, like the back, and then if I were to lift up this camera, you can see on the bottom screen over here what that looks like when I lift up the camera. That looks pretty good right there. Let me go ahead and rotate the camera now. So what I'll do is I'll say over here in the rotation, let's see what happens if I rotate y-axis. Okay, so if I do this, rotate y-axis, no, that's not what I want. That's basically moving it, rotating it to the left and to the right. So let me go ahead and type in 0 here and press enter. Let's see what happens when I do this with the x-axis. So again, I'm going to rotate this. Oh, that's exactly what I want. So I'm just going to keep on dragging this until we're looking down on the game board. It looks pretty good. And then I think I'm going to need to lift this up just a little more so that I can see the entire game board. Let me see here. I think I need to move the camera back a little bit so that I can see more of the bottom part. So let's see what happens here. If I click some of these various items over here so that I can get a better perspective. I think what I need to do is I need to do top down. So I'll right click and let's go to top. Yeah, that's pretty good because then I can take this blue arrow and drag it back. Ah, there we go. So now I can see more of the actual plane, and of course you can adjust the camera to however you like. Maybe you want this to be a little bit more on top, say for example like this, and we want the rotation to be not so drastic. So I can just simply, my mouse pointer is over here, and I'm dragging down and making this so it isn't so drastic. And the only problem with this though is I can't really see much of the game board, so maybe I should zoom up. And so to do that, let's see if I can select bottom or left or right. Actually, it doesn't matter because all I need is this green button to move the camera up, and let me move the camera back, and maybe up just a little more, maybe back just a little bit more. All right, you get the idea. Because eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to place walls around here so that the player object does not fall off of our plane. Okay, so in order to add the various walls, let's go ahead and add a game object. So to go ahead and click over here on game object, we're going to say create empty. And so I'm going to rename this. Let me click on this once to walls. And so this will be the parent game object, walls that is, that will contain west wall, north wall, south wall, east wall, so forth and so on. Okay, by the way, that doesn't look so good. So let me see if I can right click and let's go to free so that I can see what this looks like. And then if I hold down the Alt button, now I'm using a trackpad here, so it's a little bit strange here in terms of me organizing this, but that looks fine. All right, let me go back over here to walls. Let me make sure that this thing is set up at the origin. So that means going over here to its transform. I want to click on this gearbox, select transform. So now we know that this is in the center. Okay, so at this point, I can go ahead and create an object. I can go ahead and click over here on create, say for example, 3D object, and I can select cube. And I'm just going to stretch the cube so that it is a wall on the plane below. All right, but instead of cube, I'm going to call this thing west wall. So let me go ahead and type in west wall. That's fine. Let me make sure that this is at its origin. So I set reset, and you can see this over here. And then I'm going to press F on the keyboard so we can zoom in and focus on this. You know what? The player is in the way, so let me go ahead and select the player and just deactivate it temporarily here so that I can focus simply on the west wall. So then again, once again, click west wall. I want this to be a child in the parent game object, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it right on top of it, and then let go. And so now this is a child, west wall, of the parent walls. Okay, so west wall is selected, and let's go ahead and change the dimensions. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can adjust its scale. So if I go over here, let's see what happens if I type in 0.5 for the x-axis, tab, type in the number 2. Okay, so you can see here that I've just changed the width, and I've also changed the height. And what happens if I type in, say, for example, 20.5? All right, so as you can see here, the wall is actually the same length as the plane. Another way to resize the wall, well, first of all, let me just make sure that the west wall is actually selected. And what I'm going to do is select this guy over here that allows me to change the scale of the selected object. So if I click on this guy over here, I can't really see a whole lot over here or over here as well. So let me see if I can change this. I'm going to hold down the Alt button on my keyboard to change this. That's not really helping me out. How about if I change this over here? It's getting better and better here. Let me just see if I can zoom out a little bit more because I want to see the entire wall. I'm using my trackpad, so it's a little bit more cumbersome to do that. Okay, here we go. So I can at least see the size of the wall. I'm going to take this blue button and resize it, as you can see over here. So let's see here. That's at about 20. Well, it looks like it's at about 19.98. Let's see what happens if I type in the number 20 over here. So I type in 20, press enter. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And it looks like it's underneath the plane, and I don't want that. So let's see if I can get a better view of that. So let me go to perspective, and you can see here part of it is underneath here. So what I can do is I can pick up the wall. I'll go over here to the position, and I'll type in 0.5, press enter. No, that's still a little bit too low. That's because of the scale over here. So let me type in the number 1. Nice. Okay, so it looks like it's all the way on the top. Now I'm going to go ahead and move this guy. So let me go ahead and select this button over here where it says move the selected object. And then I can move this to the x-axis, y-axis, z-axis, so forth and so on. That's not really a good perspective here. Let's see if I can change the perspective over here. And I'll just take this red button and move it. And I'm using this, both the screens actually, to help me out. If I move this all the way to the edge over here, you can see what that looks like over here in terms of the position. What happens if I just type in -10? So if I type in -10 and then press enter, that looks pretty good. Let's see here what that looks like from a different perspective here. So let's see if I can, that's from the top perspective. That's pretty good, but I think I need to move it a little bit more. So let's see here, that's too much. I can see over here that that's not going to work out. So let me hold down the Alt button and see if I can zoom out a little more. So let me zoom out a little bit more here so I can look at this. Oh, that looks fine. Let's go ahead and move this over here, something like this. All right, let me take this wall and duplicate it. So I'll hit Command D, and so let's call this my east wall. So east wall, enter. And then I'll just simply take this, reposition it over here. Yeah, that's too much, just a little bit more. That looks good right there. All right, I'll take this and I'll duplicate it with Command D or Control D if you're on the Windows machine. Let me tap this and change this to north wall. Now obviously I'm going to have to change the dimensions over here because, well, I shouldn't say obviously. One of the things I could do is just simply to rotate this, or I could change the scale option, make this 2 and make this 0.5, or I could just simply rotate it. Let's see what happens if I put my mouse cursor right here on top of the Y. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this, and as you can see, it rotates it. And let's keep on rotating that to 90 degrees. In fact, let me just type in 90 degrees here so I know it's exactly the correct rotation. Press enter. Yep, looks pretty good. And then I'll just simply take this guy and move it over here. I said this is the north wall, so we'll move this to the top. From our camera perspective, it looks like we're a little bit off here, so that's why it looks like this is the north wall, or this is north in accordance to the camera. So I'll just move this over here like this. That's fine. I'll have to make an adjustment to my camera in just a moment. And then I'll just take this north wall over here and I'll duplicate it with Command D. And I'll change that to south wall. Enter. And then I'll just move this all the way over here like this. That looks like it's a little bit too much right there. Something like that looks pretty good. All right. Let me go ahead and take the player and reactivate the player. So I'll click this checkbox right here. And let's go into our play mode. And let's see what happens. All right, so let me go ahead and move this player around. We know that he's going to bump into the various selected objects, but I want him to bump into the wall to prevent him from going off the plane. So far is looking pretty good, so I'm just using the arrows over here, making sure that he stays inside of the game area. Yep, looking good. And finally this corner over here. All right, so now we have our boundaries at least. And if you want to move the camera so that you can see more of your playfield area, that's fine. But the most important thing is that our player is not going to roll off of our game scene.